Hello, my name is Emma. Welcome back to my channel. I actually had a different video planned for this week, but there is currently some knitting related drama that I have been called upon to speak about. This is kind of a joke, but I had a few people reach out to me and let me know about this situation and send me some screenshots. I've also seen 3 different threads on the Craftsnark Reddit, so I figured if they're talking about it, I can talk about it too. So the drama of the week in the fiber arts world is between these 2 people, knitcroaddict and Woolstock.dk. And this is actually yet another case of someone claiming that their work was stolen. I really don't want this whole channel to just be about like copying accusations, because that's gonna get old really fast, but it does seem to be happening a lot, and I want to talk about this one. This one sort of plays out in a similar way that a lot of these situations do, but there are some interesting things to look at that are unique to this situation. And then at the end of the video, I want to take a little bit of time and talk about why I think this is happening more, but for now, let's just jump into it. So the players in today's story are knitcroaddict, or Juan, who is a crochet and knit designer, blogger, and YouTuber from Minnesota, and she releases free patterns on her blog. The patterns are also available as PDFs for $5 to $6 each on Etsy and Ravelry, and some on Ribbler as well. Her Etsy shop has around 20,000 sales. She has 149,000 followers on Instagram and 276,000 subscribers on YouTube. On her blog, she has a little blurb about herself that says, "If you're looking for crochet patterns that are easy for beginners but still modern and stylish, then you've found the right shop. These are all original designs with each pattern written with the beginner in mind. Most of the written patterns include video tutorials as well as step-by-step photo instructions." And then she also has a little blurb on Ravelry, which I'll talk more about that if you're not familiar with the website later on. But on there, she says, "I've been crocheting for 7 years, but have recently started making my own patterns and designs. I'm a bit of a rebel. I didn't learn to read a pattern until a couple years ago. I'm always making new designs and I wanted to share them, so I had to learn to read them to make them. I'm always making and sharing free patterns and tutorials, and I hope everyone enjoys making them as much as I enjoy designing them." I'm not sure how recently this has been updated, so I don't know if the 7 years is 7 years from like today, 2023, or 7 years from like last year, whenever she wrote this. I'm not sure. But either way, her first crochet pattern on her blog is from July 1st, 2020. And then next is Woolstock.dk, which is the Instagram account of a Danish local yarn store / knitting cafe that sells yarn and coffee. The main person associated with this situation from the store is Louise, who I believe is the yarn store owner. And then knitcroaddict also mentions Christelle later on in one of the posts. So those are the 2 people that I think are associated with this, but there are obviously other employees. And yeah, this is a yarn store. The Instagram account has 19,000 followers, and here are some pictures of the store. I actually recognize this because I've had a few people that I follow go here and, you know, buy yarn from here. And yeah, it's a really cute store. It's one of those that like comes up on a lot of like best yarn stores lists for Copenhagen, which is where it is. So like I said, they have 19,000 followers on Instagram and they have 37 patrons on Ravelry, which if you don't know what Ravelry is, it is basically like a social media for knitting and crochet. It launched in 2007, and it functions as an organizational tool for a variety of fiber arts, including knitting, crocheting, spinning, and weaving. Members share projects, ideas, and their collection of yarn, fiber, and tools via various components of the site. So I do have a Ravelry account, but I am not really super familiar with the interface and terminology. I don't like use it that much. But from what I understand, them having 37 patrons means that there are 37 people that went to their store and then went to the site, went to Ravelry, logged their yarn purchase, and added the yarn to their stash. And again, as far as I understand, these like yarn stashes are sort of like a digital journal of people's collections of yarn. This is a place for people to keep track of what yarn they have on hand, where they purchased it, what yarn it is, and also what projects they might want to make with it. In a sort of preliminary search, I couldn't find anything about Woolstock's revenue, and so I wanted to pull together some hard numbers so we could like compare the size of these 2 people, or one of them's a a location. So this number, 37 patrons, and like the stash that they have compared to knitcroaddict, who has 116 patterns published on Ravelry. Ravelry also has a function where you can list your project that you've done and connect it to the page that the pattern shows. So like under the pattern, it'll say like 5 projects, and then it'll link to 5 different people that have bought your pattern and made it. And I wanted to try and figure out how many projects were on knitcroaddict's page, but I couldn't figure out how to like get the full number. So I sorted all of her patterns by most projects first, and this is what the first page of results looked like. So from this page of the top 10 results, there are 294 projects associated with these patterns. So that's only from people that made the pattern and then went to Ravelry and actually filled in the information to list it on this site connected to these patterns. This really isn't a perfect comparison because obviously these are 2 different businesses and business models. One is a brick and mortar yarn store that focuses on yarn sales from like their actual store, and then they also design patterns. And then the other is a full-scale pattern design business that sells and promotes their patterns on multiple sites, and like that is the focus. And knitcroaddict is not selling yarn. So it's not the best comparison, but I just want to give you an idea of like sort of what we're dealing with and the people that are a part of this. So getting into the copying accusation, on Monday, August 13th, knitcroaddict posted a reel to her Instagram that has since been deleted. But the terrifying and beautiful thing about the internet is that it is forever and nothing is truly gone. So I do actually have a download of the reel. I forgot to mention this when I was filming, but thank you to one of my followers, Juliana, for sending me the screenshots and letting me know about the situation. Basically, in the post, knitcroaddict shows a video of the sweater in Woolstock in the store worn by the 2 employees. I think one is Louise and I think the other one is Christelle. And on top of that video, there's an overlay of herself wearing her version of the sweater. And the text on the screen says, "These people have stolen my pattern design and are selling it without my permission. I'm so angry for this one. We tried reaching out to them and we could have easily resolved it. No response. So I'm coming to my knitcroaddict peeps. What would you do? It's happened many times, but I'm heartbroken that another small business would do it so blatantly without any offer of credit or collaboration. Please read the description if you're interested in this copyright infringing drama." And then the caption says, "When I started knitcroaddict, it wasn't to get rich. I just didn't want to work 12-hour shifts in a restaurant forever. I wanted to pursue my passion and love of it. That's why I've tried to build a community of like-minded fiber artists, and I've tried to make everything accessible to everyone. I've seen my designs stolen many times. I've seen them mass-produced and sold at big box stores. I've seen independent makers just like me steal them as well, and to see another small business of actual fiber artists steal it so blatantly without so much as a wink in my direction is heartbreaking, and honestly, it's enraged me. We could have easily worked it out if they would have responded, but they usually don't when they know they're wrong. I'm not sure how far I should take it, but if you see or know these people online, please let them know I'm very upset. Thank you for all your support. Prayer hands emoji." So just like right off of the bat, this is a pretty standard copying accusation. She does use some very strong language, like copyright infringing. She uses the word drama when there wasn't any drama before this post started. She also does the classic thing where she says, "Oh, we could have worked this out, but they didn't get back to me, so now I have to blast them publicly." And what some people have pointed out is that because they're in a different time zone, she didn't really adequately wait for the response. I don't know exactly when she messaged them versus like when she decided that like, enough is enough, I have to talk about this. But as often is the case with things like this, someone not responding to your message is not an admission of guilt. And I think we can use common sense and say that and understand that. I do want to say that like, I understand being frustrated if you think someone has stolen your design, and I understand not wanting to wait for them to respond, especially if it takes a couple days and you picture it in your head as them having read it and then just maliciously deciding, I'm not going to respond because I actually did steal it and I don't want them to know. But from the way that this reads, I don't really know what her solution would have been, like what they could have worked out. This is not a situation where the messages have been made public, so I don't know what she said. But kind of from everything we've seen subsequently, it seems like the only solution that she would have been happy with is them taking the pattern down and or giving her credit or something like that. So let's look at the actual sweaters in a little bit more detail. So this is Knit Crow Addict's sweater. So the pattern is available for free on her blog. I'm going to show just one screenshot from it, but I didn't buy the pattern and I'm not like sharing it with you, and I'm not supposed to be. Like, it's free on her blog. You can go look at it. There are a few things that I do want to note about the patterns. The first is the materials that Knit Crow Addict uses. She uses a number 3 lightweight yarn. She says that she uses a cotton and gives the brand name, and then uses 4mm knitting needles. And then here is a picture from the pattern. Again, this is from the blog. I'm not like showing her patterns that are behind paywalls or anything. And it shows the construction of the garment. And what you can tell from this picture is that it is made up of 4 rectangles. We have the front panel, the back panel, and then each of the sleeves are also rectangles. The way it's laid out, it looks like everything is even. So there's no increasing or decreasing anywhere. You just cast on A stitches, knit up B inches, then you do that twice, and then you have the sleeves, which are the width is C and the length is D. This is a very basic, normal sweater construction. The tank top I'm wearing currently is like very much exactly like this, except without sleeves. So this is just like 2 big rectangles. I do have a little neck shaping. This one doesn't even have neck shaping, which is fine. Like, people can make basic patterns, and like, especially if you're releasing them for free, I would sort of expect that the patterns are a little bit more basic. We have an idea of what the construction looks like here. And then to take a look at Woolstock's pattern, here is a photo of their pattern. This is their materials list. So they did make a version with cotton, but they also have a version that is a wool held double with a mohair. So basically what this means is you take 2 different yarns and you hold the strands next to each other and you knit with them both at the same time. And that creates a different effect. It makes the garment a little bit thicker, a little bit fuzzier, and more appropriate for winter. So this already is different from Knit Crow Addict's yarn choices, right? She made a cotton version, and yeah, they made a cotton version too, but they also have this other version. And these yarns are from their yarn store. And then also looking a little bit more at the details on the listing, these are different measurements than Knit Crow Addict's, and they use a different size yarn, 3.5mm needles. So if you don't know a lot about knitting, these things completely change the way that you make the garment. So if you have smaller needles and different yarn, then you're gonna knit a different amount of stitches. And I don't have any pictures of the pattern from them because it is not free, it's behind a paywall, and I was considering purchasing it so I could compare them, but I think at this point I have figured out everything I need to know that like these are not, it's not a direct copy. It's not a case where this yarn store saw her pattern, took it for free, copied and pasted everything with measurements and numbers and everything, and then are selling it as their own. So after she posted that response, a lot of her followers went to Woolstock's page. And so then the Woolstock account posted a response on August 15th at 12:06 p.m. This was an 8-minute long video of Louise talking. This is the person I was talking about earlier, who's the owner of the yarn store. We won't watch the whole video, but I'll play a few parts of it and then summarize the rest. There's music playing in the background of it, so I don't want to watch too much of it in too big of chunks, but I will play some parts of it so you can get a sense of like how Louise is speaking about the situation and the tone of voice she uses and like how she approaches this whole video. Part of the reason why the video is so long is because there are no cuts. It's all just in one take, and it's Louise talking to the camera.
Today I'm making a video in English. I want to show you how I do my designs.
So right off the bat, to me, she comes off as very genuine and very genuinely complimentary towards Knit Crow Addict. Even in this video, she tells people to go follow Knit Crow Addict's free patterns on her website.
Turns out that it's almost identical to another pattern, Knit Crow Addict. But I want to show you how I got to this design.
She then talks a little bit about her design process and how she came to design this sweater. She says that designs can happen simultaneously across the whole world, and then shows a very basic V-neck sweater, which is something that has been made millions of times at this point, and nobody could possibly claim that a basic V-neck sweater was their idea. She then says that she was actually inspired to do this design by another Danish knitwear account called My Favorite Things Knitwear. If you are at all in the knit crochet online space, you probably have at least heard of this person. They are very popular. She has 307,000 followers on Instagram and does a lot of like really cool basic designs. The reason people like following her patterns, I think, is because they're super wearable. They're very chic, they're very classy, they're often in very muted colors, which makes them appeal to a large amount of people, and her patterns are well written. I've only followed one of them, but it was well written. So she understandably is kind of a big influence on the knitting community, and it makes even more sense for her to have inspired a knitter who is Danish as well. So Louise goes on to say that they create these things called Advent projects, where it's like a one-size-fits-all project where people can purchase yarn in certain amounts and then they get to make it throughout the month of December. So for that project, they made a scarf that was very similar to My Favorite Things Knitwear scarf number 1. And then after that, Louise said that she really liked the way that the stitches were sort of open, and she asked one of her employees who was good at crocheting to crochet a bolero version with a similar effect of having the little holes in the work. Then she says that people in the store were really into that design. It got super popular, and they were all asking for a knit version. So then she made a knit shrug with a very similar stitch, and then she wanted to make a sweater version because she liked the cardigan so much. She says in the video that she got this stitch from the scarf number 1 from My Favorite Things Knitwear, and since then, actually, My Favorite Things Knitwear has released a sweater that is very similar to both Knit Crow Addict and Woolstock DK's pattern. And I think that just goes to show like how much of a prevalence this stitch has. If you're not super familiar with knitting, it might look very complicated to you, but this is a super simple 6-row repeat. I think I haven't actually done this stitch, but I skimmed through Knit Crow Addict's pattern. It's a combination of yarn overs and purl 2 togethers, which is like a very simple way of creating this nice airy texture. She then goes on to show examples of how many of her other designs are constructed with these 4 rectangles, because it's a pretty easy way to construct things, especially if you don't have a neck hole shaping. That makes it really easy because you just start with a certain amount, you end with the same amount, and then you bind off and you're done. Let's listen to what she has to say about people coming up with the same designs.
Actually, I think it's nice that we make patterns that look the same. It must mean that we are onto something that is popular and that people like.
She then goes on to say that she doesn't feel like there is this competition in the space of patterns because there are so many knitters and there always will be so many knitters, and there's never enough patterns and yarn for them all to make it. She calls to celebrate each other's designs instead of claiming and calling thievery and theft. Near the end of the video, she once again points to Knit Crow Addict's website and then compliments her several more times, calling her a talented designer and praising her for releasing patterns for free and making video tutorials, saying that she doesn't have time to make video tutorials because she runs a yarn store. She then also throws in a little joke about people looking on Knit Crow Addict's website and maybe finding one of her patterns that looks like Woolstock's.
And look at her wonderful design. I showed you some of mine. Maybe you can find one of her patterns that looks like mine. No. Everything is okay between us, and it's just coincidental.
She then pulls up her version of the sweater and talks more specifically about the differences, saying that the arms are slimmer and it has different ribbing, and she has both cotton and a silk mohair version, whereas Knit Crow Addict's is just a cotton version. So the comments on her video are mostly positive, and she had a really good attitude about it as well. So there were people saying like, oh, I never liked Knit Crow Addict. I unfollowed her. I don't want to see her stuff. Like, you're reacting so nicely to this. And instead of taking this commentary and sort of feeling empowered by it and feeling vindicated by this, the account responds in a very gentle way. So someone says, I unfollowed her too. That's a no-go from me, but I'm happy that I found this page. And they respond saying, you might be right, but I understand how she must feel. Poor her. She might not know that knitting and crocheting has been around since before Christ, and that no look/design can be claimed to belong to anybody. So even at this point, after they have been sent all this hate, specifically from this account, they're still giving her the benefit of the doubt that she might just have genuinely not known. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention is that this account almost always posts videos in Danish, and they made this video in English specifically to respond to the situation. And if that is not like the most badass thing ever, then I don't know what is. And shortly after this, knitcroaddict posts an apology. This was posted at 1:30 on August 15th, so just about an hour and a half after Woolstock posts their video. This is a long one. She says, "Now that everyone's had their say, I'm going to make a final post about this pattern situation. To everyone that supported me, I love and appreciate you as always. I never meant this to harm anyone. I just needed to speak up for myself finally and for anyone else in this community that felt like their work may have been plagiarized but never said anything for fear of the backlash. I know a lot of you feel me and a lot of you reached out in support. I reached out to them through DM and email before I made the post. When I didn't hear from them for a few days, I assumed they were going to ignore me, and so I made a post in response. If they would have responded with anything, I wouldn't have posted it. Those of us who are designers are the only people that will understand, especially if you posted your designs online long enough to see them copied over and over again. When you tried to call them out, they gaslight you and call you crazy. Then you're left feeling powerless, unseen, unheard, and very frustrated. So I chose to take a stand for myself this time, and it has been just as painful to do. It caused so much chaos and anger, understandably, and I felt horrible for every minute. But when you always second-guess yourself and let people take advantage of you, eventually it has to stop. Unfortunately, it stopped here and landed right on Woolstock DK and myself. I didn't want to hurt them, I didn't want to take from them, and I wasn't mad that they were making money off a design that looks uncannily similar to mine." Okay, kind of sounds like you were, but all right. "I wanted simply for them to acknowledge that I'm not some crazy vindictive bitch and that their design, if not stolen, then at the least is so similar that it's understandable why I would feel it was stolen. I won't apologize for standing up for myself, but I do apologize for any unwarranted harm I may have caused. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to be seen and heard, and I did the only thing I could to do so. My designer peeps and my knitcroaddict fam understands and sees me, and that's all I can ask for at the end of the day. Please, let's all move on and make peace with Woolstock DK." Continued in the comments. "To Christella and especially Louise, I'm sorry for all the stress you've been through for the last few days. I know it has been terrible as I've been on the receiving side of the attacks as well. I hope we can all move forward and remember what's important in our community. Collaboration, cooperation, and supporting each other. Red heart, wish you all the best." So yeah, let's look at some of the comments. "I don't understand why you seem so confused by these comments being made when in your previous post you actively encouraged people to go over to their account and comment on their stolen designs. I understand the frustration of seeing a design similar to yours, but I thought they were different enough to be noticeably not stolen. I personally don't think it was a great idea to send people over to their account." And then in response to that, she says, "First, thanks for coming to me with a fair and reasonable comment. I'm trying to be fair and I might have gone too far, but I'm trying to remedy it. Second, I never once asked anyone to attack anyone anywhere. I didn't tag them, hashtag them, or link them in any way in my post, and I tried to cover their faces in the video out of some semblance of decency. I definitely dropped the ball. I own that as my part. I should have done better. As far as, did it look similar to mine or not? A Danish follower sent me the pattern as they thought it looked so similar. This was just the culmination of multiple situations like this. I regret not handling it better, but I don't regret attempting to stand up for what I thought was fair and just at the time." Then this user responds and says, "It's valid to stand up for yourself. I do have to disagree on one part as a viewer. Seeing your last post, I genuinely interpreted it as a call to action, as the account was tagged. I actively followed the tag to their account to see what was going on. In fact, you stated to go comment and let them know about the situation, as your email hadn't gotten a response yet. To completely deny this is also suspicious on your part." Here's another comment. "What a ridiculous non-apology, mostly justifying your main character moment the entire post. While they definitely look very similar, when the pattern is 4 eyelet ridge squares, you overreacted and acted ignorantly when it was obvious that it was a coincidence." Then she responds and says, "You're entitled to your opinion. I never attacked anyone or berated anyone, and I'm not going to start now. I'm not apologizing for standing up for what I thought was right, only that it caused so much stress for them." And the interesting thing about this situation is, I think, in general, when we see like apologies like this from big accounts, celebrities, whatever, people who have media training or PR, it's sort of understood that the less you say, the better. But knitcroaddict goes on to just continue arguing with people in the comments. If the post is still up when I post this video, which who knows if it will be, I just went to go look through her comments because there was a comment that I thought I remembered, but I hadn't screenshotted, and she has turned off comments on her apology post. But she responds to a lot of comments. Like, not just the first few. Like she is going back and forth with these people in the comments, trying to explain herself when they are giving her what I think is a very well-deserved critique of how she handled the situation. And they're basically saying, just because you feel bad doesn't mean that now you can just take it all back and we'll all forgive you. Like, saw what happened. We saw the words that you said. You can't just tell us that you didn't say to go to their page when you did, and their account was visible in the first video. But she also has gotten quite a few positive comments as well, as is to be expected with someone of a following of this size. And this is the comment that she pinned on the post. I don't think you have to apologize for anything. The reason that they might have paid attention to your request is because of all of us speaking on your behalf as well. What they did was not professional or ethical. It's not high school and they knew exactly what they were doing. They just didn't expect this big of a reaction from the community. Come on, we're all adults. I just don't see how someone takes one's pattern and just uses it without giving credit. So this is a classic case of someone just like not understanding the context of the situation, not understanding how these patterns are made and how they didn't steal her pattern. Like, we can prove that by pulling up the materials list. We can prove that by pulling up the measurements list. And if I had the patterns side by side, I think that would prove it as well. Woolstock DK gives a very clear lineage of how they were inspired. A lot of these comments are just choosing to completely ignore that and side with knitcroaddict because they, trust her and believe her. Here's another comment on her side saying, as you said, all they had to do was respond to your first message. I hope you continue to call out people who copy your designs. You will never regret making a stand. And she responds and says, thank you. I hope you're right, LOL. I'll definitely try to be more tactful next time. I'm not sure how, but I hope to handle it better next time. This first one was really rough, but I'm standing by that I had every right to call it out, just as they have every right to say their side. So even now, she's not backing down from her original accusation. She says even in her apology post that she doesn't apologize for calling them out. She just feels bad that they got hate for it, which is exactly what she told her followers to do. She said, go comment if you see them, go comment on their posts and tell them that they stole my design. Here's another comment I wanted to read. I think this is an interesting discussion. The internet loves to show off the worst examples of design theft and make everyone sensitive about it, but in practice, all designs are collaborative. What are our motivations for working in a crafting and art space? Spending time and resources to protect intellectual property, especially when what is labeled as stolen is the result of labor of others' hands, isn't really what teaching skills and empowering makers is about. I understand the impulse, we're all in this capitalist hellscape together, but it's worth sitting with why you would feel entitled to remuneration/credit, whichever you were after, for others' labor and exploration of a craft you're a part of the community of. And while I agree with the conclusions that this person made, I don't think that framing this situation as an interesting discussion is really what has happened here. Because what could have happened is that knitcroaddict could have framed a discussion. She could have said, hey guys, I'm feeling this kind of way, and what do you guys think? I think really this comment is what Woolstock DK has shown in their response video. They are about collaboration and community, and knitcroaddict can't just retroactively go and add in a little caption and a extended caption in the comments saying like, this community is all about collaboration after so vehemently calling out these basic designs. And I don't want to talk too much about her as a whole because I am not familiar with her designs. I had never heard of her until this happened. But just scrolling through a lot of her designs, they're very basic and she makes a lot of them. And so it is pretty much inevitable that something that has the construction of 1 rectangle, 2 rectangles, 3, 4, someone else is going to make it. There's only so many stitch patterns. There's only so many things you can do. And if you are sticking to very basic beginner techniques, which is fine and good if that's what your audience is, that's what your intended audience is, I think to go and call out almost anything as like someone directly stealing from you, unless you can prove that like word for word the pattern is the same, or like they're using your pictures, or they purchased your pattern and then a week later they have a pattern and then it looks exactly the same yarn, same material, same everything. You kind of just have to accept, like this person is saying, that we're all learning from each other all of the time. And especially as a person who makes tutorials and releases patterns for free with the intention of people making them, like you've backed yourself into a corner where you don't really have a good argument to stand on. Here's another interesting response. This person says, a lot of ruckus over a misunderstanding on both sides, but I can't understand the nastiness coming your way. You are so generous with your designs. There's only a handful of designers that freely give to so many and such very well thought out wearable patterns. I have nothing to say negative about either. I hope both businesses do well and stay positive. And she responds and says, that's the spirit. Thank you, totally agree. I always want everyone to win. I wish it had gone differently on both sides, but it is what it is, and we'll do my best to turn it into something positive in the end. I think we're all a little raw now, but I hope in the future we can all come together on these kinds of things. Like if anyone wants to use my design and make a few changes and claim it as theirs, I'm totally okay with that. All I want is to be included and acknowledged for the contribution, just a little respect, you know. I needed those positive vibrations of yours, thank you. So she's still like not acknowledging that the inspiration did not come from her and that there are many people that have used this stitch pattern before. Here's another person. Why is everyone blaming her? All she did was stood up for herself. It takes a lot to create your own patterns, and if it gets stolen, it's heartbreaking. And then this person responds and says, brigading, sending others to comment on the other account's post is not self-defense or standing up for oneself. It is an attack and can get you banned. So that's her apology. If there's one thing that the Craft Snark Reddit loves, it is a copying accusation. Several times a month, I feel like I see posts in there of a creator calling out another creator over a basic design. For some reason, it's usually in knitting. Something about this situation, though, has really especially intrigued them, as it did me, because there have been 3 separate posts in this subreddit about it. And it seems like knitcroaddict has blocked enough people or is filtering comments, because she posted a couple hours ago, and the last time I checked, all of the comments are normal. There are no references to this situation, but her apology post is still up. We'll see kind of what happens with that. Sort of wrapping up now, I touched on this a little bit in my Tay Beep Boop video, which you should go watch if you haven't seen yet. That was a really fun video to make. I want to talk a little bit about why I think this keeps happening, especially in the crochet knit space. I think there's a huge oversaturation in the online market. I think it can be easy to feel threatened and feel like anybody who has a similar idea to you will take ideas off of you and your designs. And I admit I will always empathize at first with someone feeling like their design has been stolen and copied and that someone else is profiting off of their work, because it is something that happened. Obviously, where I start to withdraw my empathy is when I see someone respond to this in a poor way. And that's not to say that you always have to be the perfect victim, but I think if you're going to put someone on blast and accuse them of copying, you really have to do your research. You really have to have the receipts that can very clearly show that they for sure saw your thing, and for sure it is a direct copy and not just inspired by. I do think in this case, it could have been a little bit tricky because the finished pieces do look incredibly similar, but I think Louise says it well when she says that we should take these coincidences as opportunities to acknowledge that we must be doing something right. I do think there are cases where someone maliciously or accidentally, because they don't know, copies or steals a design word for word, stitch for stitch. This is most obvious when a designer has like a really unique style or technique that they use, and it's pretty easy to see that there are not a lot of other people making something in that way, and then this person pops up with something that looks exactly the same. However, I think the solution in almost all of these cases is to deal with things privately and then take legal action if you really feel like you have a legal leg to stand on. I do hope that we can learn from this, but seeing as it just keeps happening over and over again, we probably won't. Like I said, I hope I won't have to just keep making videos about someone accusing someone else of stealing designs, branding, or whatever, but it does seem to be a big pattern recently. Feel free to go look at either of these designers' accounts, but as always, please do not leave any hate on their accounts. It's just not productive. In this case, we have seen that knitcroaddict does not feel like she's in the wrong. Nothing that you say is gonna change her mind, and I really implore you not to go over there. People have already said what has needed to be said, and she's responded in the way she's responded, so I don't think there's anything further to do. It seems like Woolstock DK is getting more attention, and I hope this video gets them more attention too. It seems like a very lovely store. I don't know really much about them personally, so I'm not gonna speak to their character or whatever, but it seems like they handled this situation in the best possible way that they could. Thank you for watching if you made it to the end of the video. If you liked the video, consider liking it and subscribe to my channel. This is a very new channel, and any of your engagement really helps me out. I've been trying to release about a video a week talking about craft-related drama, but I am going to be traveling over the next couple weeks, so it may be a little bit less. You might have to wait a little bit, but in the meantime, you can check out the other videos on my channel. You can check out my main channel, Made in the Moment, and I have a Patreon podcast. I just posted a 30-minute video podcast where I read through the Shein RICO lawsuit and just sort of talk about all of the details that are in the actual case. I'm also in the process of hiring a research assistant for this channel, so any of your support on Patreon really goes a long way to help me with that process as well. Let me know what you think about this whole thing in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.